and form in your mind the intention of sweeping your left hand along the floor to your right as if you wanted to come up to sitting. And notice how much effort do you feel doing that? Hand on the floor. Oh, no, no, no. Left hand on the floor. It must be on the floor. It must be on the floor. No, legs long. Legs are long. No, don't bend your legs. Legs apart. Legs apart. That's it. Feel what's the degree of effort? And just in case you find yourself close to the wall, you know you can change your position in the room when you want. So notice, as the arm sweeps around, then what follows? And then what follows? And then what follows? So track the sequence of parts as they become engaged as you sweep your arm around to the left. Track the sequence of movements from the hand up through yourself as you sweep your hand around to the right. I think I might have said to the left a moment ago. And you'll notice that some parts of your body move deliciously in sequence. It's like dominoes, clunk, 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 clunk. And then at other times, you get to a certain place, and instead of each domino moving in turn, you get a lump. They all move together, clunk. Yeah? So notice if that's true for you. You can't hear? Oh, okay, okay. That's better. Now try that around to the left, sweeping your right arm in a big circle, big circle. And pay attention to the sequencing that you feel. And also pay attention to the degree of effort that it takes for you to sweep that arm around to the left. Okay, let that be. Pause. Bring your arms down, let them rest on the floor somewhere beside yourself, as long as the palms are on the floor. Bend your legs. And now cross your right leg over your left. And then uncross them again. Do that several times and find out what's just the right position of the legs that allows you to lift that right leg from the ground and cross it over the left with minimal adjustment. Because if the legs are too far apart, it's really hard to get that right leg across. If they're too close together, it feels a bit unstable. So where is just that right distance where you can just pick up the right leg and it just folds across? And if that is difficult for you, in other words, if it's painful, cross the leg as much as you can. Now, leave the legs crossed. The palms of your hands are on the floor, your arms are on the floor. That's where they stay. And now slowly tilt both of your legs to the right towards the floor and come back, and do little journeys, little sojourns, a little bit away from home and then come back, a little bit away from home and come back. And if you have your legs uncrossed, please know that it will be quite a different kind of a lesson for you. Now, pay attention. As you tilt your legs to the right, notice the sequencing of movement up through your trunk. The pelvis, the waist, the lower ribs, the middle ribs, the upper ribs, the shoulders, the neck, the head. And then as you do the return journey to vertical, once again, notice the sequencing. How does this movement sequence up through you and down through you? Now, I asked you to intentionally keep your hands on the ground so that you can experience a contrast in a few moments. So maybe the moment has come. So bring your legs to the middle, upright, keep them crossed. And now with that left arm, could you just drape it, fold it across yourself so that the fingertips and the forearm point to the right, and it could be resting across your belly, or it could be resting across your chest. And now slowly tilt the legs to the right and return to the middle and feel what's different with this one change in configuration. It's just one change. And notice, how does that affect the sequencing of your movement and the experience of the effort of tilting your legs to the right? Does this position of your left arm afford you the legs getting closer to the floor? Now, it's good to have a contrast. So now replace that arm and go back to tilting the leg and feel the difference. Notice when the positioning of that left arm actually starts to make you up the effort. When the quality changes. Right, bring your legs to the middle, uncross them, rest a little bit. Leave your legs long and apart. Raise both of your arms up towards the ceiling. Put the hands, the palms, the fingers completely together. So the palms touch, index finger touches index finger, etc., etc., etc. Have the arms long. Ooh. And have your arms towards the ceiling. Now, notice that when you have your arms in this configuration, it's kind of like a triangle, yes? So the apex of the triangle is the tips of your fingers, and then the base of the triangle is across the back of your two shoulders. Now, whenever your arms are in this position, the intention is to maintain the integrity of this triangle. In other words, don't bend the elbows, And don't slide the hands relative to each other, but keep the integrity of the shape of the triangle. And now would you please tilt both of your arms towards the floor to your right and come back to the middle. So keeping the integrity of the triangle, do that. And you'll notice that as soon as you start to tilt the arms to the right, the left shoulder starts to lift from the floor. So for some of you, it could help to think about this movement in terms of lifting that corner of the triangle, the left shoulder, lift it from the floor and press the other corner into the floor. For some of you, that'll help tremendously. Yeah? You lift the left corner and you press the right corner. And the apex then just shifts to the right. It tilts. The whole triangle moves. And pay attention to that moment when the quality of what we're doing changes. And notice, does that coincide with your decision to stop and return? Is there any correlation between those two things? The legs are long. Or some of you want us to make all sorts of variations with your legs. No, 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 no. Excellent. Lower your arms, rest. So can you feel how this movement you're doing now is very different from spinning? Can you feel how you actually roll yourself across the floor, yeah? Rather than spinning around everything around one point throughout the middle. It's different. It's very different. So different rules apply. Bend both of your legs, stand your feet, and position them in a way that you know you could just cross the right leg over the left if you wanted to. Raise both of your arms up towards the ceiling. Make that triangle again. Cross the right leg over the left. And now slowly take your legs to the right and keep the triangle pointing towards the ceiling. And should you experience a change in quality of the movement, just return. And then maybe next time there'll be a different experience and you will be able to go a little further, but without a change in quality. And now include your arms. As your legs tilt to the right, tilt your triangles to the right. And then come back. And do so in such a way that you know you could return. I was determined not to laugh in this lesson, but that's okay. Yeah, do it in such a way that you know you could return, which means you haven't fallen. But if you do find yourself falling, the best thing that you can do is to just let yourself fall. Don't try to resist. make the mistake and go, oh, okay, that's all right, next time. Notice what you've decided to do with your head. Have you left your head in the middle so that the nose is constantly pointing towards the ceiling? Or have you decided to roll your head as you tilt the triangle and your legs? Intentionally roll your head. Unspecified. Is that a good response? Yeah? It's just unspecified for the moment. If it's unspecified, that means not this way and not that way, whichever way comes to mind first. Because some of you decided, or maybe you didn't decide, it just that's what you did. You didn't roll your head. So now when you ask to roll your head, will you roll it with your arms? In other words, will you pace the movement of the head to the arms, or will you pace the movement of the head to the legs? Or will you actually turn your head in the opposite direction? What will you do? Okay, let's return some blood flow to your arms. Lower your arms and rest a moment. You know, you can practice being aware of how you compose your actions at any time. You could be aware of how you compose the action of sitting into the seat of the car as you get into the car. You can be aware of how you compose the action when you go to take the handle of a door. You can be aware of how you compose the action every time you take a step. Please bend your legs, stand your feet. Arrange your arms in that triangle. Cross the right leg over the left. And now start to tilt your legs and the triangle to the right, but make sure that you coordinate the rolling of your head so that the nose always points in the same direction as the tip of the triangle. In other words, the ends of your fingers. So you roll your head with your arms. And that's it. And now change that over. Make sure that your nose is always pointing in the same direction, that generally your two knees are pointing in. And if you have your legs completely crossed, then that's quite obvious. But if the knees are quite separate, you'll have to choose a knee. And notice the difference in sensation, in your experience between these two different ways. Coordinating the head to move with the pelvis, or coordinating the head to move with the chest. Because when your arms are arranged in a triangle like this, that's the part of yourself that you're actually moving, your chest. So there's head, there's chest, and there's pelvis. Because when your legs are crossed like this, that's the part that you access immediately, the pelvis. As soon as you tilt the legs, the pelvis moves. That's why the legs are crossed. Go back to the head. Follow the arms with the head. And then at your own time, whenever you wish, switch to the legs, and then switch back to the arms, and then switch back to the legs, until you can switch between one and the other, and it doesn't make much of a difference. But you can make the switch smoothly without any what they would call cognitive dissonance or bodily dissonance. And given that there is no cognition without the body, they're both the same thing. Because if you didn't have a body, you wouldn't be able to experience cognitive dissonance. Great, let that be in rest, please. I heard someone say something. It's harder? What's harder? That's harder for you? Yeah. And that's good to acknowledge, yeah? That's not part of my repertoire yet. Please bend your legs, stand your feet, cross the right leg over the left. Raise your arms towards the ceiling, make that triangle. Maintain the integrity of the triangle as you tilt the legs to the right, but tilt the triangle to the left. Legs to the right, triangle to the left, and then bring them both to the midline. Now, which way does your head roll? Actually, a better way to ask that question. Which way will you roll your head? Now, maintain the integrity of the triangle, because some of you are starting to bend your elbows. As soon as you bend your elbows, it becomes more about your shoulders and your shoulder girdle than your chest. And this is really about rolling the chest. Now, intentionally, roll your head so that your nose always points in the same direction as the tips of your fingers. For some of you, this is what you do. For others, this is like very different. And for others, it's like, I can do it this way too. And then switch over. Switch from the nose following the tips of the fingers to the nose following the ends of the knees. And do that gradually when you feel you're ready, and notice that transition from one to the other. Is it kind of like a sudden jump? Ooh, yuck. Thank you. Ooh, yuck. So could you convert it into ooh, yum? Although it wouldn't be ooh anymore, would it? It would be oh rather than ooh. Oh, yum. So practice switching between one and the other, and maybe this will help. Notice which of those two do you move the most? Do you tend to move the knees through space the most, or do you tend to move the arms through space the most? Some of you are definitely leg people, and some of you are definitely arm people. Now, whichever of those two is moving the least, for example, if the legs are tilting the least, move the arms the same amount. If the arms are moving the least, move the legs the same amount, so that the spatial displacement is the same. In other words, reduce the size of the movement that you're doing. And notice, if you do that, whether you're better able to make that transition. Head following arms, head following legs. Great, let that be in rest. Last week, I think you talked with Susan about foreground and background. Yes? Yeah. And you know some of those classic psychological experiments where they have those figures, you know, the vase figure is the most famous, where you have it looks like a picture of a vase. But then when you look at it more carefully, it's like two faces facing each other. Absolutely. And what's interesting from the perspective of this lesson is that for some individuals, they can't make that transition. They can only see the face and they can only see the vase until you start to manipulate things a bit and they go, oh my God, I didn't see that. But there's something, this is worthwhile trying. If you can get one of the, there's plenty of these images on the internet, to actually feel what it's like in your body as you make that shift from face to vase and vase to face. This little kind of shift that happens in you. And then if you want to take it to the next step, and I don't mean this as a pun, but there's also that image of a staircase. And when you look at this two-dimensional representation of a staircase, you look at it and you swear blind and blue, no, it's the stairs are sticking out towards me, but then they switch around and it's like you're watching it from the inside out. It's like, what happened there? Yeah. And that's where I feel the switch in me the greatest. Please bend your legs, stand your feet. And this time cross the left leg over the right. Raise your arms towards the ceiling. Make that triangle. And as best as you can, in terms of attending, maintain the integrity of that triangle. And start to tilt your legs to the left as you take the arms to the right. and bring everything back to middle. And notice what is the tendency of your head. Again, if I was to articulate that more precisely, what is your tendency in regards to your head? Now, could you intentionally follow the tips of your fingers with your nose and also with your eyes? So it's your face that's following your tips, the fingers, and as well your eyes. And if it helps, open your eyes and look at the tips of your fingers. However, for some of you, if that gets in the way, close your eyes again. So now you're rolling your head and moving your eyes to follow your hands. Now, keep the eyes following the hands, but move the head to follow the legs. So the nose follows the knees and the eyes follow the tips of the fingers. And if that's difficult, a strategy that you can always apply is rest, come back to it. Strategy number 1. Strategy number 2, go back to the first basics, set it up, retry again. Strategy number 3, reduce the size of the movement. In other words, don't create such a big twist in your trunk. Now, continue to follow the knees with the nose and the head, and also follow with your eyes. So now eyes and nose follow the knees. The hands just keep tilting to the right and returning to the middle. That's it. And you maintain the integrity of the triangle. Notice how you're going past middle, some of you. Don't go past middle. Now, keep the eyes following the knees, but follow the hands with the nose. Cognitive dissonance. And now the last variation, the very last variation before you head for a break, in your own timing, switch the eyes following the hands, the nose following the knees, and then the nose following the hands and the eyes following the knees. And see if you can smooth that transition out. That's nice. So notice it's not so much about how much range of movement that you have, but it's more about how do you switch your coordination from one coordination to another coordination? So that the transition between different compositions is smooth. Right. Please let that be. Rest on your back, legs long. Now there's a metaphor in the philosophy of science that's very closely related to those figure background objects that I was talking about, you know, the vase, the stairs. And it was proposed by a chap called Thomas Kuhn, who said that every scientific discipline gets to a certain stage where the actual things that are experienced can't be explained in one theory. Multiple theories are trying to get to it, but it's just not working. And then all of a sudden another theory comes along and it contains all those elements that were not hanging together very well, but it explains them all at once. And the old theories just get left behind. It's his theory of scientific revolutions and the notion of a paradigm shift, which means you're looking at this image and you're seeing two faces, and you're seeing two faces, and you're seeing two faces, and all of a sudden the vase appears. And it's like, oh my God, that's a new way of looking at the world. And now you can see the world from two perspectives, the faces and the vase, the faces and the vase. Interesting. And that's the metaphor that's used for a paradigm shift. The world's changed, it's different, but you know you can still understand it in the old way, but you have a different way of understanding it as well. Please roll to one side, come up to stand. And now, just to finish off with, stand and turn yourself around your vertical and longitudinal body axis and feel what it's like to turn now. Or to be more precise, because I've corrected myself several times in this lesson, feel what it's like to spin yourself around your base of support. Right. And please have a 15-minute break. We'll come back at about 22. Yep. Not my brains. I've invested a lot in my brains. You're not getting them.